Yep, it's true. I've been meditating every day for 10 years. This is not clickbait. So today I want to explain to you how meditation has had an impact on my life, how it has changed my life for the better, and what you can expect when you begin to take meditation seriously. Now, for myself personally, I owe meditation more than anything, more than the knowledge that I've acquired from books, from the teachers that I've met. I owe meditation more than anything in having that daily practice and grounding myself in that practice has changed my life for the better, and I owe it more than anything. Now, to give you some clarity, when I say I've meditated every day for 10 years, there has been times when I haven't had the chance to sit down in a half lotus posture and sit in my meditation room. You know, I might have been on a plane from Bangkok to Oslo, which is 12 hours. But that is when you have more of an opportunity to meditate for longer periods of time. So when I'm on a plane or a bus, or I'm just traveling somewhere in general, that is usually a great opportunity for me to dive deeper into my meditation practice. But I have made an effort every day to at least sit for 30 minutes or more every day for 10 years. Actually, I've been meditating well over 10 years, but it was just over 10 years ago that I made a decision that I need to take this practice seriously and dive deep into meditation. And when I say meditation, I mean the traditional sitting meditation. So what you think of when you hear the word meditation, this is what I have been practicing for every day for 10 years and a little bit more than that. You know, I've been meditating around about 15 years, but I've taken 10 years every day seriously in my practice, and it has done wonders for myself. And what I've been practicing every day for 10 years has mainly been Vipassana meditation or Zen open awareness meditation. These two practices have been my primary go-to practices for my daily meditation. And this is what I usually recommend to people in my books, these two meditation practices, because they allow you to dive deeper into your mind so that you can understand the true nature of your mind. One day I will make another video on how to meditate properly, and I'll explain these two meditation methods a lot more. So as I mentioned earlier, I would make an effort to at least meditate for 30 minutes a day. But the average time I would usually meditate would be 45 minutes a day, up to an hour in the morning. Now, if time permits and my schedule is a bit more free, I will try to fit in a 45-minute to an hour session before bed at night. And these lengthy meditations give you the chance to dive deeper into your mind and to understand, the true nature of your mind. Now, a lot of entrepreneurs out there who, make a lot of money through books and giving tips and hacks on how to improve your life will often say that you only need 20 minutes a day meditation. Now, look, this is a great start, and I don't disagree with this, but this won't allow you to dive deep into your mind. That only begins to happen after the 30-minute period when you sit for that long. When you sit for 30 minutes, you begin to break through different layers within your mind. And we have to remember that the 45-minute zone is usually the sweet spot in a monastery. All of the monasteries and ashrams I've been to, the average sitting time is 45 minutes. And, if you feel great and you want to continue, you can continue to sit depending on what the meditation teacher or the monk has planned for you. You might get up and you might do some walking meditation, for example, if you're in a Theravada monastery in Thailand. But my average time has been 45 minutes because that's just been my training. And I also understand the benefits of having that 45-minute meditation practice. But 20 minutes, to begin with can be great. And like I said before, if you're in a situation maybe where you only have time in the day to sit in your car, you might be in an Uber or something, you might be traveling for 40 minutes, make half of that a meditation practice. Sit in the back seat and just switch off. But if you have an opportunity at home, make sure you're at least doing 30 minutes. And this will begin to allow you to dive deep within your mind and understand meditation a bit more deeply, a bit more intimately. So after 10 years meditation, what is the result of all of this meditation, all of this sitting, which may seem ridiculous to some people? You're just sitting there and you're just closing your eyes. But the main effect everyone usually experiences who are long-term meditators, is you begin to experience the meditative mind. Now, what I mean by the meditative mind, I mean that life itself begins to become sort of a meditation. Now, I don't want that to sound woo-woo or new agey. It just means that your mind begins to settle and you begin to see reality without too many beliefs and opinions clouding your perception of just what is happening in front of you. This is what the meditative mind is. You just see the world for what it is rather than what you believe it should be. And this is one of the big effects of meditation over long periods of time. That sense of I, which is wound up in the prefrontal cortex here, where the intellect resides, begins to subside and you begin to just see reality for what it is. That meditative mind then allows you to be present in each moment of your life. That's what it does. Now, of course, there's going to be periods where your mind's going to wander and you're going to drift off, and maybe some sorts of concerns may cloud your mind. But in general, because of that meditative mind, you will be more present in each moment, and you will understand what is the next step to take in your life, what you need to do, and you'll understand this with a lot more clarity, as opposed to someone who is wound up in their thoughts and their own beliefs. Now, this naturally happens from constantly stilling the mind. Now, in Sanskrit, they call that NIRODHA. You find NIRODHA in the Yoga Sutras by Patanjali. You find this word through many great Asian texts, especially in India. So you have this constant stilling of the mind. So when you're constantly stilling the mind, bringing it back into tranquility and stillness, this is where you are bringing your mind back into its naturalness, which is allowing it to become meditative. This is obviously one of the big purposes of meditation itself. It's not that, I just got to manage my mind, I just got to sit here and just manage my thoughts and this and that. One of the end goals is to harness this meditative mind so you can become the best version of yourself for the whole world. So this NIRODHA, this stillness, this settling of the mind happens because when you're in meditation, you zero in on the wandering mind. You're exposing the wandering mind. Usually we just wander with the mind. We drift off with it and we go here and there or wherever it wants to take us. But what you are doing is you're zeroing in on the wandering mind, and what you are doing is you are breaking up these linkages of thoughts, this continuity of thought that creates the ego and makes us drift off into whatever fantasy or illusion that's going on in our head. So what you are doing is this stillness, as you are breaking up this continuity of thoughts. And when you begin to break up this linkage of thoughts, you begin to act more spontaneously and you are usually more at ease with life. This is what you feel when you are around long-term meditators. You actually feel this ease they have. You feel this sense of spontaneity where they have this sense of spontaneous joy and laughter and happiness about themselves. And this happens from long-term meditation. That ease we can't really get in any other way. You can't get that from acquiring, a ton of material objects or even wealth, as much money as you can. You won't get that ease that way. You have to get that from internal work. So what I've experienced is when I've begun to experience this meditative mind more frequently, is I'm not as erratic or overly angry or emotional when certain situations arise. Sure, there are going to be moments that are going to probably push your buttons to the nth degree and you might slip. Has been situations for myself and also for long-term meditators. I've witnessed some masters, snap and so forth and so on, sometimes within good reason, but other times that was just something that was a new experience for them that, it caught them by surprise. But it will do that to the best of us. But 99% of the time, you are usually not erratic and you are not overly angry or emotional about a lot of situations. And this is very beneficial, not only for yourself, but for other people around you and for the world in general. And the reason you are not erratic or angry or overly emotional is because you've exposed the wandering mind. These are usually an effect of the wandering mind, but you've exposed it. You've zeroed in on the wandering mind, and you see how the wandering mind can sort of take you down avenues that are not totally true. Someone might say something to you, the wandering mind might identify that with a past experience, and then off down the rabbit hole of anger you go, and then you express that to the other person. Meditation will help with this because you're beginning to zero in on that wandering mind and expose all of these subtle emotions. You're essentially not following the wandering mind in this process. Another thing that happens when you begin to meditate long term is you become super sensitive to how internal and external noise is affecting you. You become super conscious of how they are affecting you because you are much more conscious of your interior landscape as well as what's happening in the external world. And so you will take whatever necessary steps need to be taken to address, certain situations that are affecting you in a negative manner. And this sensitivity doesn't also stop there. You also become super sensitive of the body. Now, a lot of people who practice, for example, might practice vipassana, become super sensitive of sensations within their body when they're meditating, because this is part of the practice. Vedana in Sanskrit, Vedana in Pali, is about becoming sensitive and conscious of the sensations within your body, the sensorium within your body. The idea in Vipassana is that when you become more conscious of these sensations, you begin to dig down into the root of where our thoughts and sensations and everything arise within the subconscious, because the idea in Vipassana is that that sensorium is an aspect of the subconscious, what we would call the samskaras in Sanskrit, where all of our deep emotions and thoughts that are stored within our subconscious begin to bubble up through our sensations. So the idea then is to become super conscious of that. But in general, when you begin to meditate long term, you will become super sensitive of the body. Now, we need to understand the function of the meditative mind before we understand the effects of long-term meditation, because then you'll begin to have a framework. This is what happens, and this is why these changes are happening in my life. This is why it is having such a big impact on these aspects of my life. So when we look at the function of the meditative mind, when we do begin to experience that after long-term meditation, that we find that our mind can focus for long periods of time without wandering. It actually can zero in and focus on a task or something for long periods of time without too much wandering happening. As opposed to someone who doesn't meditate, where they might sit down to write a book, for example, and they might not be able to zero in on what they want to write, and their mind might be wandering here and there, and the next minute they've wasted half an hour. This can happen. I am a writer, I know how that works. I remember when I was writing 12 years ago as opposed to now. I know the differences and the amount of work I can get done now as opposed to back 12 years ago. And the difference is vast. So because your mind can focus for long periods of time, you actually do develop the habit of recognizing the wandering mind a lot quicker than other people. So your mind might begin to wander, but then you begin to recognize it a lot quicker than normal people. And actually you'll notice that your mind is not affected by attention residue. Now, what I mean by attention residue is, usually you might say if you check an email in the morning and you don't get to that email straight away, then you might go to the next task, and on a subtle level, that is still affecting your performance in that moment. But the more you have a meditative mind and the more you have the ability to zero in and focus for longer periods of time, you won't be affected overly by attention residue. Actually, bad habits that cause attention residue tend to be avoided when you begin to become a long-term meditator, because you understand what needs to be done, and if you're going to play the game of turn on the internet and check your emails and Facebook and Twitter and so forth and so on before you start writing a book in the morning, then you know that this is not going to be very productive. I know this personally from being a writer, but this is for anyone. This is for anyone. So if you have a deep work task that you want to do first thing in the morning, you don't want any attention residue affecting your performance. And usually long-term meditators won't engage in such bad habits. But that is something that we can all do. You don't just have to be engaged in meditation, but it's something that you need to think about even if you want to achieve something in your life. It's better to focus on what has to be done as opposed to, tending to all of these unnecessary tasks that we usually do. People check their emails a bunch in a day and Facebook thousands of times. This is not productive and will affect your performance. So I've explained to you that long-term meditation gives you the ability to experience this meditative mind, making life more of a meditative process where life becomes a lot more clear to you. Now, what are some of the effects of that? What are some of the effects of long-term meditation? What are some of the effects that I've experienced for meditating every day for 10 years and more? Now, I have 18 specific things that have happened for myself and that I've also verified with other long-term meditators that have actually been experiences for them as well. And so these are some things that you can expect if you begin to take meditation serious and make it your life practice. Number one, I've already sort of discussed, but it's kind of a no-brainer. You become less emotional and more focused. This is one of the core aspects of meditation in general, and this is why a lot of entrepreneurs do advise people to meditate for at least 20 minutes a day, because even with that 20 minutes, you can begin to experience subtle states of stillness and also begin to manage your thoughts a lot better. And in doing that, you begin to develop this meditative muscle where you begin to be less emotional and you have more of an ability to be focused on the task at hand. Number two is something maybe a lot of people who love to chit-chat won't want to experience, but one of the effects of long-term meditation is you start to not talk too much. You're just not attracted to talking a lot, and you prefer internal and even external quietude, but mainly you are more attracted to internal quietude. And I've noticed this with myself, that I just don't care to talk a lot. I think that talking a lot, in some sense, is just a lot of wasted energy, and the things that we talk about are often meaningless. And you can often be in the presence of someone without talking, and you can have a fruitful experience with someone just from being in their presence. Now, number two leads into number three. Now, one of the effects that you will experience because you don't talk so much is, it's kind of a result of not talking a lot, is you are not interested in chit chat or gossip. This is kind of counterproductive to you and is actually harmful to not only the person giving the gossip, but also the person receiving the gossip. So you are not really attracted to getting into mindless chit chat and talking about other people. This is what happens when you begin to meditate long term and you begin to cease this over talking that a lot of us are caught in. Now, as a result of those two, the fourth effect from long-term meditation is you begin to listen more. And when I say listen more, you begin to listen more deeply. Conversations become much more rich to you than, say, idle chit-chat or gossip. You begin to engage in more fruitful conversations, and you begin to listen more deeply to other people, their concerns, their worries, their joy. You begin to listen more deeply. And one of the things that begins to happen is, because you do listen deeply, you're not waiting for your turn to talk. Now, we see this in most people in conversations, and obviously you don't want to say anything because it is kind of rude, but you do see, if you observe a conversation where someone will be talking about something, someone has heard what that person is saying, they begin to process it, and they're already formulating what they want to say next. This is kind of like a skill of a great debater, but we're all in this process a little bit. We're all in this process of waiting for our own turn to speak. But what happens is, when you begin to meditate long term, is you begin to listen more deeply. And sometimes when someone says something, there'll be a silence because you're kind of processing it in that moment. And then you are kind of looking for the right response to what they're talking about. It might be a much more slower process than being in a chit-chat process, but it's much more authentic. Now, the fifth effect of long-term meditation is you are not interested in social trends and what is popular. I've noticed this big time with myself, that I kind of really cringe at a lot of pop culture because it's kind of, it's the system manipulating people a little bit. And when you begin to long-term meditation, you have more of an ability to sense fakeness and group mentality. And so, as we see with a lot of pop culture, there is a lot of fakeness and there's a lot of posturing in pop culture, and also which affects social trends. And then we see a lot of people following each other. It's like the blind leading the blind. We see this. But when you begin to meditate long term, you begin to sense this fakeness and this inauthenticity, and you begin to sort of distance yourself from that. We see a lot of this within art and so forth and so on. If you can call that art, you see a lot of pop idols and this and that have their music and lyrics created by the machine, and then they are just the puppets to deliver this, as opposed to a traditional artist or musician or so forth and so on. And I've seen this obviously in the book industry, where a lot of mainstream books are really watered down versions of what they could be, as opposed to, if you look at a lot of independent publishers, where a lot more of the deeper material resides. And so this is obviously an effect of pop culture and what feeds the economy, and how do we just give people who follow social trends just little bits of information, but don't give them the whole dope, if you know what I mean. So this is sort of what happens when you begin to meditate long term. You identify this fakeness and you distance yourself from it. Now, the sixth effect of long term meditation is you are not interested in playing with your phone and wasting copious amounts of time with social media. That is just counterproductive, and you are just wasting your life. And so when you meditate long term, you notice that, look, what does this give me? Now, for myself, because I began meditating every day just over 10 years ago, and as I said to you, I've been meditating for quite a lot longer than that. I missed the whole boat on this whole smartphone boom. I missed it, and I'm just not interested in it. I don't have a smartphone, and I have social media because we're on YouTube, but I don't waste time on that. I prefer to read and write books. I prefer to meditate. I prefer to spend time with my wife. I prefer to spend time going for a long walk and just experience the world, the real world, not this world in this screen. And so when you begin to take meditation seriously, you'll see that, wow, I'm wasting a lot of time on social media. I'm wasting a lot of time fidgeting with my phone. We often scold our children when they're playing with their toys. So, what's the difference when you see an adult doing this? I mean, they're wandering with their mind. The digital world is kind of like a physical or a digital representation of the wandering mind, because you can go in there and you can surf anywhere. Oh, look at that! The algorithm takes you down the rabbit hole, and then you'll resurface maybe 10 hours later. But meditation, consistent meditation, will teach you to kind of refrain from overly using your phone and wasting time on social media. Now, the seventh effect of long-term meditation is you're not interested in news or politics. These are kind of a bore to you, and not because that news and politics are not important, but because a lot of the news and a lot of the political information that we hear, it's just sound bites. It's just to keep you engaged in the daily news cycle, and there's nothing definite or lasting about this. This is just about keeping you engaged, either in fear or just trying to get you interested in something that's meaningless to you. It can be meaningless. You are only interested in true matters of importance. That's what happens when you begin to meditate long term. And I get this a lot because I don't watch the news and I don't have any interest in politics. I mean, it's a complete bore. It's just posturing. And so a lot of people say, oh yeah, but you don't care for the world. It's not that I don't care for the world. Obviously, when true matters of importance arise, I hear about it. If something really big, like, for example, 9/11, if something like 9/11 happened, obviously you will hear about it. You will know about it through people. It's everywhere. And it's a true matter of importance, as opposed to a news cycle on things that don't really matter. So you won't be really interested in the daily news, for example. And this is actually a practice in India. It comes under the term vairagya in Sanskrit, which means non-reactiveness or dispassion. Kind of a dispassion for the world. You're not interested in matters that divide us. You're more interested in matters that unite us. That's kind of what vairagya is, because through the practice of vairagya, of dispassion, you begin to see the world in its true unified state, as opposed to the news and politics that are trying to promote, fear and hatred amongst humanity. So you've identified that when you begin to long-term meditate, and you know that this division amongst humanity is false. So this leads to the 8th effect of long-term meditation. And this is an ability to see through the illusion of separateness. So the illusion of this and that, left and right, nation versus nation, religious belief versus religious belief. You can see through this illusion of separation. And this is actually an effect of the meditative mind, where you begin to see the world for what it truly is. And so this 8th effect is that there's no, like in America, especially at the moment, there's this big political turmoil between leftists and the right wing, and you have the alt-right and you have the alt-left, and you have all these people clashing, and this is really just all nonsense. It's all tribalism. And one of the big psychological defects that humans have is this sense of tribalism, where we see something that resonates with us, but then we bind to it, and then we become a fanatic. We see this with religious fanaticism. And this is just immaturity. And this is what happens when you begin to meditate long term. You begin to see that there is this tendency for the mind to bind to groups, to form a tribe. This is evolutionary thinking. And then to become fanatical and defend your tribe and your position. But what meditation does is it kind of wipes the slate clean, and you see that, wait, there's no left or right. There's no Australia or America. There's only what is. There's not this separation between this and that. There is no this and that. This and that only arose from a mind that was plagued with tribalism. The tribal mind created this and that. And so when you begin to take meditation seriously, as I have done, you begin to see that, wait up, there are no tribes. There's one tribe, and that's humanity. Now, the 9th effect of meditation is you are more efficient with your time, and you are not attracted to wasting it anymore. A lot of us waste our time. I remember a guru said to me once in India, he called kind of ordinary people time wasters. So we are not here to waste our time. We need to be more efficient with our time. And when you begin to meditate every day and you become a long-term meditator, then you begin to see how you can use your time wisely. And this is one of the benefits that meditation gives you. Now, this kind of leads to the 10th effect of long-term meditation, which is that you are less attracted to entertainment and clickbait and more attracted to knowledge. Now, with social media, as we know, there's this whole clickbait phenomenon, and it's usually to get you in the door of someone's video and then to waste your time for 20, 30 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever, with some sort of entertainment. This is the whole game social media is playing. And then what happens is that when you fall down that rabbit hole, hours disappear, we've all experienced it, and then you could have used that time wisely in learning something and enhancing your own knowledge. But what long-term meditation does is it helps you lose your attraction to clickbait and little things like this trying to gain your attention, and you begin to zero in more on what is important. Now, number 11 in the effects of long-term meditation is reading, and how reading is enhanced. Now, what I mean by this is that you can read for like 4 hours without the mind overly wandering. And this is one of the effects that I've experienced deeply because, I enjoy reading books and it's part of my work as to, to read knowledge and also to write about it. And so I've noticed over the 10 years that the more I've meditated, the more I've been able to read for long periods of time, and my mind hasn't overly drifted off into, nonsense. So this is one of the effects that you will experience, and this helps you learn. This is one of the things, it helps you learn. And so meditation has the ability to help you learn because you can begin to absorb knowledge without having this wandering mind affecting that process. And this is what's wonderful about long-term meditation. So, if you're going to begin to meditate every day, then don't be surprised if you begin to read with more clarity and then you begin to learn a lot easier. Number 11 kind of blends into the 12th effect of long-term meditation, which is the ability to cultivate intelligence and harness creativity. You have much more of a higher skill of cultivating intelligence and harnessing creativity. But the thing is that when you begin to long-term meditate, is that you have more of an attraction to cultivating knowledge because you're seeing how you are benefiting from cultivating knowledge, how it's making you become a better person. But because of cultivating that intelligence, then you begin to harness your creativity. You begin to use your intelligence to harness your creativity. And so then you begin to create things that are much more lasting and more pure for everyone else. And this is one of the bonuses of long-term meditation. And so not only like with the last one where I said that you read and you learn more, but you actually have more of an attraction to cultivating intelligence and beginning to harness that creative aspect within yourself. And we all have that creative aspect within ourselves. I never knew I did until I started writing, but I had to put myself in a situation to understand that I did. And I think that all of us need to give ourselves some time to find what we truly are passionate about. Number 13 on our list is kind of a result from the previous 2 effects of long-term meditation. Because number 13 is that you become more articulate and you become a better conversationalist. And I've slowly noticed this over the 10 years that I've had more of an ability to be a good conversationalist about anything, as long as it's not, chit-chat or gossip or, something meaningless. And I've also started to have more of an ability to articulate certain things a lot better than I did, say, 10 or 12 years ago. And this is an effect of meditation because meditation helps you speak with clarity. It helps you to organize your thoughts a lot easier, and it also helps you to be clear in what you are trying to say, what you are trying to define. And so this happens because you are reading more, you are learning more, you are cultivating intelligence, you are harnessing creativity. How can you not become more articulate and a better conversationalist and someone who's just much more pleasant to be around? This is an effect of long-term meditation. And a lot of people say, they might watch a lecture by, say, Jordan Peterson or someone like this who are very articulate and, he's basically a genius in some sense. But they ask, how can I get to that stage? And it's like, well, you're not Jordan Peterson, but I have a method for you that may enhance your ability to be articulate and be more clear in what you're trying to say and also becoming a better conversationalist, which is beneficial for everyone. Number 14 on our list is you are more present in life. You become more available for other people and the world. This is one of the effects of long-term meditation. I mentioned before that, that obviously you have more of a sense of presence in each moment. And this is true because you're not going here and there from the wandering mind. You are just sort of zeroing in on what's important. And usually what's important is in the present moment. So you are much more present in life, which makes you more available. So someone might come to you with a concern, and because you're not drifting off into your own mind and all of these illusions and fantasies we have, you're more available for other people, and what could be more important than that if we're trying to build a sustainable and prosperous future for humanity. The 15th effect of long-term meditation is you are more comfortable in silence. You actually yearn for quietude, and you're okay with doing nothing. This is one of the effects. You are completely fine with doing nothing, and you actually yearn for silence. This is what happens in your life when you begin to meditate every day, because you understand and you begin to feel that silence, that you begin to build a relationship with that deep silence within all of us. And so you begin to really connect with that, and that's what you usually seek. You seek and you yearn for that silence. A lot of people these days are not seeking silence or quietude. They usually, they put the earbuds in and they listen to a podcast, or they listen to music, and they really do whatever they can to stay away from silence and boredom. But instead, you are running towards that. You actually feel great in that silence. And this leads to the 16th effect of long-term meditation, which is that you become less bored and more content. Boredom is usually a result of the habit of us filling our mind up full of meaningless noise. And then when that noise is taken away, there's kind of a lag of, our mind's used to being filled up with noise. And then there's this nothingness. And then there's this, we get agitated and we get worried and we want to fill it up full of something, I can't be bored. But what happens is when you begin to meditate every day for 10 years is that you become less bored and more content just in, everyday life. Like with the previous effect, you become more content in just being silent and staying in quietude. And so boredom doesn't worry you anymore. You might still feel the effects of boredom, but not to the degree that someone who's always seeking noise and seeking stimulation will experience it. Now, the 17th effect of meditating every day for 10 years that I've experienced and that other people have experienced and that you will experience when you begin to take meditation seriously is you will begin to become more humble, compassionate, and forgiving. Now, this is the most important effect in my opinion, because this is what the world truly needs. We need more humble, more compassionate, and more forgiving people. Recently, I was watching a documentary with my wife about Khyentse Rinpoche, one of the Dalai Lama's gurus, who has passed on now. But one of the yogis was talking about Khyentse Rinpoche, and the yogi said, he was so humble, he was listening, he was compassionate, he was forgiving. And it's hard to find many people like that these days. And my wife burst out laughing. It was kind of spontaneous laughter, because it's kind of true, isn't it? It's difficult to see a lot of humble and compassionate and forgiving people. We live in a world where it's an eye for an eye, and we always have to get one over someone else. We're constantly self-interested, and we're living in this sort of survival mentality where higher consciousness states begin to happen when you begin to meditate every day long term, and then you begin to experience these higher consciousness states of authentic humility, compassion, and forgiveness. And this is what we truly need in the world. And like I said, this, in my opinion, is the most important effect of long-term meditation. And, if we can harness that and we can get out of this self-interested state and realize that we are part of something much greater than ourselves, then being humble and compassionate and forgiving is actually not that hard. You just have to have that true understanding, that recognition that, we are part of something much greater than ourselves. What's all of this, self-preservation, and why all this constant self-defense of ourselves, when that's all going to go away one day? You have to focus on what's truly important. You have to focus on who we are collectively as a species and our relationship to the universe. And so this is what happens. You begin to become much more humble, much more compassionate, and much more forgiving, which leads into the last effect, the 18th and last effect of long-term meditation, which is ultimately you become a better human being. Obviously, this is based on the previous one, but you ultimately become a better human being. And if we look at the world now, and we could say, a lot of people would say, yeah, but the world's not as bad as it was when when there was world wars and so forth and so on. And I don't disagree, but the same psychology is still within humanity. This same, self-interested, this same tribal mentality where we form alliances and we're scared to stand on our own 2 feet and we're scared to see the world for what it truly is still with us. It hasn't left. It's just that we got a lot smarter and, we kind of agreed that, killing millions of people is kind of stupid, and it is. And so what we need are better human beings. And so what meditation can ultimately do, and what it ultimately does when you begin to meditate long term, is you become a better human being. From my own personal account, I remember what I was like 15 years ago as opposed to now. And I can say with no sort of arrogance that I am a better human being now than I was 15 years ago. 15 years ago, when I look back at that guy, he was out of control compared to now. So this is what we can all experience if we take it seriously. And we ultimately need better human beings in the world. And so this is what happens when you begin to take meditation seriously and you begin to meditate every day long term. This has been my story about meditating every day for 10 years. Actually, more than 10 years, as I said. But my challenge to all of you is that, if we want a better world, and if what I'm saying is true and all of these effects that I talked about to you today, these 18 effects are true, then we need to take meditation as seriously as eating food. And in some sense, it is as important because we are taking care of the health of our own mind, of our own personality. We are taking care of that. And, we eat good food to, bring good health to the body. Meditation is like good nourishment for the mind. And so we have to really take meditation that seriously. And we have to take it as seriously as I have in my life. And I mean making it a daily practice, a life practice, where you begin to meditate every day, which then begins to benefit yourself, which then begins to benefit the world. We have to understand this. There's no point in being physically healthy if we are psychologically unhealthy. So meditation will help you with this. And everything I've explained to you today, the 18 effects that I've experienced and the 18 effects that I've heard many other long-term meditators explain that they've experienced, can be something that you can experience as well when you begin to meditate seriously. And ultimately, if you do take it seriously, you will begin to change yourself and you'll begin to become that humble, compassionate, and forgiving person. Ultimately, that better human being that the world needs. And then and only then can we change the world for the better to live in the world that we all deserve. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.